Mold making.
Here's a cross-cut section of a blanket mold. This is the life cast, the sculpture, water clay, the mother mold, and the base plate. Supports it all. And I'm going to replace the water clay with the silicone. I remove the water clay. This leaves a void. When I fill the void with silicone, this is called the blanket mold. This is wind clay. I call it water clay, and some people actually sculpt with this kind of clay. After time, this clay will harden, so you must keep it covered or it'll dry out. Using a clay cutter, I cut the clay into slabs, and then I cover it with plastic. These slabs are about a ½ inch thick. I will also cut some clay about 1 inch thick. There's a large undercut along the base of the sculpture. I spray the sculpture with water, and I drape a piece of plastic on top. The water makes it stick better. You need the plastic to protect your sculpture from the water clay. Now I start cutting the clay slabs into strips and start laying them on the base of the sculpture. The water clay is very soft, and it's easy to press in place. Lay in the clay strips and working your way upwards. When the blanket becomes silicone, I want the silicone mold to come out of the mother mold easily. So I need to make sure that the clay blanket doesn't have any undercuts. After covering it with the water clay, now it's time to smooth out. And I take a damp sponge and just rub. And be prepared to get dirty, because water clay is quite messy. You really don't want any pockets on top of the clay, because this could form an air bubble when you're pouring the silicone. Using a putty knife, I start smoothing out, and I want to make sure that I'm forming this with no undercuts. If it starts drying out, just add more water. I laid a clay triangle on the mouth area. Then I applied ropes of water clay on top. The ropes are vent channels. This will allow the silicone to flow easier and not create any air bubbles into the silicone. I just smooth out the vent channels with water. Well, this blanket's done. Just clean up around the base plate. I cut a plastic cup. This will make my spout to pour my silicone into. After I make the mother mold, I just sink it into the clay triangle. Now I'll apply a good coat of Vaseline on the base plate. I cut some more clay slabs. These slabs will be used to create a dam around the entire mold. I lay some clay wedges on the outer rim of the base plate. These are pry keyholes. This will allow me to pry it open. Now I can start laying the clay strips for the dam. you didn't have the dam, this would lock things in, and plus it's just so messy. One thing about mold making, it's an art form. If you take your time designing a better mold, you'll get great results. When I started laying this blanket mold, I do believe it was about 4 o'clock in the morning. It's a pretty long process. Now the dam is complete. Now I can start doing the mother mold. I will spray a good coat of Krylon's Crystal Clear as a clay separator. When mold making, you need to prep yourself. You need to make sure you have everything handy right there in front of you. Mixer, brushes, burlap. Prepping this makes everything run smoother. I start mixing Ultra Cal 30 and I pour it into the dam area. Using a paintbrush, I help it flow easy. I mix another batch and start at the top. I'm just brushing in the base coat of the Ultra Cal 30. Basically just trying to build up the first layer. I mix up another batch and just repeat the process. Now I add saturated burlap strips to the base plate area and top them with Ultra Cal 30. And I continue building up the mother mold. With each batch I do mix, the batch will get thicker. I soak the burlap strips in water first, then I place them into the Ultra Cal bucket. Now I make the Ultra Cal a lot thicker. Now I start laying burlap strips all over. I mix up a very thick batch of Ultra Cal and start laying it by hand. Building up the mother mold, this will allow me to make a flat top. This top will be the flat base. I'll lay a piece of plexiglass on top of this, so to create more smoother plane. I used a sponge in my hands to smooth out. The mother mold is finished. I need to allow it to dry. After drying, now I can remove the dam. After removing the dam and cleaning up some, I can use the pry points to open it. You just need to be very careful when prying. You don't want to crack it. This is heavy, and I need to be careful not to damage the sculpture. After opening, I need to remove the water clay from the mother mold, but I'm going to keep this water clay for measuring. Well, here's the mother mold. Now I just need to do some little fine cleaning. Now I take the clay that I used for the blanket, and I'm going to lay it into a 5-gallon bucket. After laying the clay into the bucket, I can make a mark onto the bucket. This will indicate how much silicone I will need to mix. Before I start mixing up the silicone, I need to make sure my sculpture is complete. So now it's time for fine detailing. I add some clean clay to the nostril area, and I do some more fine detail work. Now I'm going to start prepping, getting everything ready to pour the silicone. I'm using Max 30 from Smooth On. Using a digital scale, I'm going to measure out all my components I need. Measuring A with a digital scale and putting it into the 5-gallon bucket. This too can be quite messy. Please use gloves. Some silicones require you to measure by volume, but this silicone, you need to measure it with a digital scale. Remembering the mark that I put on the 5-gallon bucket that will determine how much silicone I actually need. After measuring Max 30's A component, now I need to put the mother mold on top of the sculpture. Spraying a good coat of Krylon's Crystal Clear as a clay separator. This is important. The Roma clay contains sulfur. Sulfur and silicone, they don't like each other. So this is a must. It must be sealed. I'm applying a good coat of Vaseline to the inside of the mother mold and on top of the base plate. This mother mold is very heavy, so I need to be careful on how I lay it on top of the base plate, not damage the sculpture. The mother mold fits great onto the base plate, and I'm also adding a strap to tighten it down. With a hot glue gun, I will glue the base plate and mother mold seam. This will help to prevent leaks. Now I will measure the B component of Max 30. I pour B into A. I'll be using a large mixing bit. You must mix these components well. You must make sure that you get along the side of the bucket. They recommend that you vacuum the silicone. This draws out all the air out of it. I don't have that type of vacuum degassing system they're talking about. Some people say it don't work, but I just wanted to try to see if I could do this. I placed the lid on top, and the vacuum I'm using is a shop vac. The small square piece on the lid is a small window made out of plexiglass. I tried to suck out much air as possible. It even collapsed the bucket. Did it work? I believe it did. It did draw bubbles to the top. Now I pour the silicone into the mold. When pouring, I wanted it to produce a thin stream. It took about 10 minutes to pour. Here is another cross-cut view. I turn the mold upside down. Remove the live cast and base plate, and remove the clay sculpture. I will add a thin layer of clay and make the core with a handle. Now it's time to demold. I gave this 16 hours to cure. Now I'm removing the hot glue and prying the mold open. The mold is open now, and now I need to remove the clay from the silicone. After removing some of the clay, now I can lift the silicone out of the mother mold. I turn the mold upside down and remove the sculpture. Here is the silicone mold. It came out beautiful, not one bubble.
foam rubber skin.
I'm applying a good coat of sterilic acid to the core. This will prevent the foam rubber from sticking to the core. Allow the sterilic acid to dry. After drying, it may leave a residue. This residue must be brushed off with a dry brush. Here are the foam rubber components. Measuring the components: 30 grams of flow, 4 grams of ammonia, 24 grams of gelling agent, 337 grams of foam base. $67 grams of foam agent, 33 grams of curing agent, and 30 grams of flow will be added to the mix. Do not add the gelling agent. The gelling agent will be added during the mixing. Using a Sunbeam Mix Master, this is my mixing schedule. Setting the timer for 9 minutes and 30 seconds, pressing start at the starting of the mixer. The temperature in my room is 69 degrees and the humidity is 50. This is very important. The hotter the room could speed up gelling time. Mixing foam, or running foam as they call it, can be difficult, so just be patient and work things out. At 1 minute mark on the timer, I add the gelling agent. At 30 seconds, I start turning the bowl backwards using the spatula to clean off the edges of the bowl. Not using a foam injector gun, I'm simply just putting this into the mold. Not trying to put a whole lot at one time, I need to brush it into the mold. This will avoid trapping air or making air bubbles. This makes me nervous. By putting this into the mold, I have a time. This time is the gelling time. I need to make sure I close this mold before it starts to gel. Some of the skins that I ran for the Animatronic project did have bubbles in it. I don't know why. I blame it on myself. I tried this way in putting it into the mold by using a paintbrush and just working quick but smoothly and not being so nervous. That was my big problem. I put the core onto the mold and it was time to bake. I closed the lid to the oven and I turn on the hot plate. And also I plugged in the fan. This is important. Do not forget this or it will not cure right. I press the foam with my fingertip. If it doesn't come back, it's gelled. It was a 6-minute gel time. I baked this skin for 11 hours at a temperature of 125 degrees. I open the oven at 100 degrees and allow it to cool. Look, a foam rubber piece, flexible and soft. The mold is still warm. It's under 100 degrees. The core and silicone came out of the mother mold together, like I designed it. Now I'll just remove the silicone mold. I sprinkle baby powder or talcum powder on top. This will prevent the foam rubber skin to sticking to itself. Now I can remove the skin from the core. And don't forget that the foam has a sprue on the core. This must be cut off so you don't tear the skin. The skin came out beautiful. There were a few bubbles on the mouth, but very tiny. Now I'll show you how I repaired the bubbles in the mouth. These are small bubbles. Using a cotton swab and liquid latex, I filled in each bubble with a little liquid latex, building up the layers after each layer dried. After removing the foam flash, I used a soldering iron. I needed to cut a groove behind each lip. This will allow the lip wire to go in place. I burn this edge away with a soldering iron. After burning, I powder it with talcum powder. I burn a little and then I powder, and keep repeating this process. I need to be careful because I can go through the skin. Well, the mouth is finished. Now I need to do the eyelids. I do the same thing as before. I've just removed the foam flash. Using the hot iron, I burn the edge and powder it afterwards. You need to be very careful here because the foam area here is thin. The software that I use for my animatronic project comes from brookshiresoftware.com. And the software is VSA, which stands for Visual Show Automation. Here's a screenshot of the routine I made for making teeth. This software is very easy to use. Using the graphical interface, you can program your routines to create a seamless lip sync animatronic routine.
Making teeth. For your monster making needs, monstermakers.com. You have email.